Hi everybody, and welcome to the second of the Cloud Management Community's live events for November. Before we introduce our speaker for this event, we must mention our proud sponsors. Our first sponsor is PolicyPack. No matter the size and regardless of complexity, the world's best organisations use PolicyPack for modern desktop management, security, automation, and reporting. Our second sponsor is Recast Software. Whether you're looking for right-click tools enterprise to improve device security, report patch installation and increase compliance, or shift left for ServiceNow plugin, Recast products experts can help you get the right fit for the organization. Simon and myself have actually had the pleasure of meeting our speaker for this week, and we met him at the South Coast Summit in Southampton a few weeks ago. I would like to introduce Victor Hedberg, who is speaking to us live from Sweden. I will let Victor introduce himself and what he will be talking to us about. Victor.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Thanks for that.
No problem.
For that small introduction. Let me try to shine a bigger light on who I am and what I do. So my name is Victor Hedberg. I work as a cybersecurity consultant at a company in Sweden called Trusec. And what we do basically is everything cybersecurity related. So I'm taking part in loads of proactive engagement, trying to keep up on your toes to stave off any attempts of breaching your environment. But we also do loads and loads of incident response engagements, particularly this year, where we've reached all of our previous records when it comes to total engagements. So when it comes to full-blown ransomware, that's when we step in, trying to get the customer back on their feet with a brand new polished environment, with a little extra twist on, trying to avoid previous mistakes, but as well as assessments, health checks, trying to figure out, is your organization as safe as it could be? And what I'm going to talk about today is the features in Microsoft 365 Defender called Advanced Hunting. I did have a presentation created before this session, but when I looked at it a second time, I felt that we're all tech interested or tech geeks, so we're going to dive straight into the portal and try to find some interesting things using Kusto instead.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Just want to mention, if anyone's got any questions, we can address them as we go. If you chuck them into the comments section, one of us will highlight it, or Victor can pick that up as well, and we'll just see what we can do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Victor.
So basically, why using advanced hunting is important is because, let's see if I can share my screen here. Oh God, I don't get which screen is which. Screen one, which is screen one? Screen two. I'm taking a blind guess here. Let's see. I got it. Awesome. So basically, why advanced hunting and custom queries are important is that, like, 365 Defender or Sentinel or whatever Microsoft security solution you're using, it's really good at detecting like known entities or known behaviors when it comes to malware or suspicious activity, stuff like that. But you can't really replace like the logical thinking of a human being with an AI, at least not yet. Skynet aren't real so far. So you really need to have like your own basis of custom detections in place to really adjust the solutions to your environment. So as you can see on the screen here, we have a couple of alerts from my environment, which are not a part of the default settings. And I'll show you how they are implemented and why they're a good thing to use. And needless to say, all of these advanced hunting capabilities are a part of the E5 or Defender for Endpoint Plan 2, the real upper echelon of things. So yeah, you can't use these kind of KQL queries if you're using Defender for Endpoint P1 or you're not in the E5 licensing hemisphere. So, sorry. So if we're looking into advanced hunting.
Victor, sorry, just is there any chance we could just zoom in a little bit, please?
Yeah, sure.
It's quite small on the stream itself. So there we are. That'd be great.
Is that
Thank
better?
you. Yeah, that looks. Just let us know in the comments if there's any if that's all right for everyone. That'd be great. But yeah, thank you.
No worries at all. So basically, what Custo is that it's a syntax language quite similar to SQL Server, but it's its own Custo query language. We won't be covering the basics of what is Custo and how to use it, but I'll show you real cool things you can do with advanced hunting in this sense. So in this query, we're actually looking into modifications into specific Active Directory groups in our on-prem environment. These tables that it's looking into are actually populated by Microsoft Defender for Identity, and as such that it is an on-premises product, we're able to monitor changes in our Azure environment, as well as triggering alerts on these kind of events. So in this really long Custo query, we're creating a variable called monitor groups, where the data table consists of the groups in Active Directory domain services, which we are trying to overwatch or monitor with this kind of alert scenario. So as you can see here, we have all the built-in ones from account operators, domain admins, enterprise admins, whatever. But you can also populate this particular table with any user group you're interested in monitoring with this kind of scenario. So what this query actually does is it takes this table and it cross-references this one with the identity directory events table in Microsoft Defender for Identity. And basically what we can do, as you can see, we can set the timing date from to cover the most relevant data in our environment. We're looking at when the group membership changes in any one of these groups. And we can present this data in an orderly fashion, so our SOC or security operations team can actually consume this data and take action on any occurrence of these kind of actions. So let me go ahead and run this query real quick. And as you can see here, we have a couple of hits in our on-premises environment. These older ones down here are a part of my old domain controller. It has since been decommissioned, so the data from this one isn't actually relevant for this demo. But these newer ones from November 23rd, as you can see, we have the group membership changed from Active Directory. We can look into these are actually removals from domain admins. We see the target object of which user was removed from this particular group, the UPN from the Active Directory, display name, what domain controller was responsible for the change, which user was responsible for the change, the domain, account UPN of the user responsible for the change, any kind of data that you're actually looking for when it comes to these kinds of operations. So this is like, you could use this as a one-time thing, create a custom query right here, trying to find out in a specific incident or in a specific, we need to look up this kind of information right now. I have some examples for that one as well. But this kind of ties into, because, Microsoft Defender for Identity is a really underestimated tool in my view. But it has its shortcomings as well, because if I were to look into the MDI portal, let me just open another tab here. And a little / as well. This kind of behavior is not unexpected in any way, shape, or form. So as you can see, we have no alerts present in the MDI portal. The only alert we have here is a health alert, but that's because my domain controller is currently offline. But using advanced hunting instead, we can actually get an alert on each and every addition or subtraction from any of these groups, which would greatly help our security operations to really stay on top of their feet when it comes to any kind of malicious addition to any one of these groups, or any kind of manipulation in any way, shape, or form. So any of these custom queries or advanced hunting queries that you're creating, you could also create what's called a custom detection rule for. There are some caveats when it comes to creating a custom detection rule. You need to have a couple of these attributes present in your query in order to successfully create a custom detection rule at all. One of them is timestamp. Another one is, I think, report ID. It kind of depends on what you're looking for, basically. So if you're looking at out here in the left column, we have the one called custom detection rules. If you're looking into this, you can see that my membership in sensitive Active Directory group changed. We can actually see what kind of actions can we use on this particular incident directly from the Microsoft 365 Defender portal. Sad thing here when it comes to Defender for Identity is that it does not have any concrete actions we can take on an on-premises user yet. We can only, confirm user breach, perform password reset, stuff like that on an Azure AD user using either Defender for Cloud Apps or Defender for Identity. But in here, we can set how often do we want this custom query to be running. When it comes to membership in sensitive Active Directory groups, we want it to run as often as possible. And here we have every hour. We can set the severity of the alert, category, suspicious activity, you name it. And these are all from the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So whatever your custom query category kind of aligns to, select it. And we can give us a short description and a recommended actions to these kind of events. So looking back into the incidents queue, we can see that we have a couple of incidents generated by this custom query. And if we open this, we can see on the alert details all of the information that we added on our custom detection. So it's a suspicious activity. Custom detection tells us that it's a custom detection rule taking place rather than any one of the built-in from Microsoft. And we see all of the alert description, recommended actions. And that's pretty much all she wrote when it comes to, surveying your or monitoring your Active Directory on premises in this sense. But we can't just look into, or we're not just limited to looking into Defender for Identity when it comes to advanced hunting. We can also look into, well, any of the security capabilities built into Microsoft 365 Defender. So if we're looking at one of these, this is a Defender for Endpoint query, which is actually using a URL with a number of IP addresses, which are known to be C2 or command and control servers used for deploying ransomware or creating botnets or whatever. I actually have it up. I think it's here. You can see it's quite small. Let me enlarge it a bit. But this is actually the data that we're using to feed into our custom query. So if you see the destination IP is, if it is any one of these in this long list of IP addresses, we can actually block our Defender for Endpoint onboarded devices from connecting to this IP using advanced hunting. You can, of course, also create a custom detection using Defender for Endpoint, stating explicitly that this IP address right here, 81.250.153.227, if you're trying to connect to this IP, immediately block this connection attempt. But that's kind of hard to keep a track of, because as you saw, the list just keeps on growing, and I think we're up to like 250 IP addresses on that list in particular, and those lists exist in a greater number than I could ever count on. But the same kind of approach applies here, that we're creating a variable where we're using this list from the Fido tracker website, and we're scanning our device networks events in our Microsoft Defender for Endpoint environment with any connections in correlation with any one of those I just showed you on the screen. So in the best of worlds, and my current lab environment is apparently a part of those best of worlds, you get this result, stating that we're not seeing any traffic, or we haven't seen any traffic going towards these IP addresses in our environment. But the same thing applies to this one. We can, of course, create a custom detection rule based on this query. So if we're looking into custom detection rules, connection to C2 server based on Fiodo tracker, and let's edit this one. Same kind of thought of chain goes into this one as well. So what we're doing here basically is that we're not only consuming the data that Microsoft provides us to use natively, we're also helping Microsoft evolve their platform into identifying, what our threats are, and thus helping every other customer using Microsoft Security Suites. I did have a custom detection rule set up for the MS HTML scan. I somehow flubbed it, so my custom query is no longer available. But I'd like to show you a particular query that we used in one of our previous incident response engagements, called looking like this. So in this particular incident, we had a malicious threat actor using Microsoft Word doc files, but in reality they were RTF files, which allowed the threat actor to perform the techniques called DLL side loading, In a nutshell, what DLL sideloading is that you're providing a malicious DLL to a known process or a known service, so that when the service tries to run, it accidentally picks up your malicious DLL and performs the malicious activity instead of the legitimate activity. So in this particular case, this nation state actor used the Microsoft Word documents as their initial deployment for these kinds of attacks. And these particular Word files were, as I said, RTF files instead of Microsoft Word files. And what's so specific with the RTF files is that they allow for a template to be downloaded. So this is in no way a macro-enabled Word file. This is a real text format file, which downloaded a template containing a malicious DLL onto the victim computer. How we found this out and how we got to investigate the entirety of the environment, we actually used this exact query in our engagement, looking for, as we can see here, we're looking for any email attachment where the file type contains RTF, because you can't hide the fact that it actually was an RTF file, but the file name did not end with .rtf. We then projected these files into SHA string, the 256 variant, and we looked for in the environment any indication of these kinds of files being around. This helped us to actually identify even more victim computers in this particular engagement, and it also helped us to further realize that, okay, this is bigger than we thought. Initially, we only thought that it was like 1-2 users who were affected, but this particular incident involved, at least 50 users subject to the same kind of action. And an ordinary antivirus or anti-spam filter would not have picked this up.
Victor, can I jump in a sec? So with these queries, do you just generally have like a collection of queries that in a library that you just kind of go through? Is this something you build up and you just select which you think is the most appropriate? How do you approach that?
I'm getting to that. I just wanted to show you guys the really cool examples, but there actually is quite a large community side to this as well. Okay. So you don't need to invent the wheel every time you're trying to create any of these queries.
Sure. Okay.
But in this particular case, we got around to using these advanced hunting methods to identify the victim PCs and successfully isolate them, performing fresh installs, gathering all the forensic evidence, blah, blah, blah. And we successfully stopped this attack. But building on what Andrew asked, if we're looking into, let me see if I can get this working. So queries, do we need to create everything from scratch? No, we don't. As you can see here, under queries, we have a category called community queries. And under every one of these, there are a lot of community created custom queries, which you can use and customize to fit your environment needs. Just looking at the Strat malware campaign, APT Baby Shark, APT Tropic Trooper, any one of these queries can be used in your environment. And these are created by a member of the community and provided for the community in order to help others identify these kind of indicators. So if we're looking at this particular one called Dragonfly, this is all provided for us. We don't need to actually create any query on our own. So if we're suspecting that, you know, we're a victim of this kind of Dragonfly incident, these queries are readily available for all of us. And that's just from the Strat malware. As you can see, we have a lot of under categories when it comes to exploits, execution, email queries, whatever. Take a look into any one of these, try to find out, you know, which of them are applicable to our environment. And that's actually what our security operations center in Trusec, we have a buttload of custom queries that we're creating and supplying to our onboarded SOC customers. So we don't just have these community queries, we also have the shared queries from my employer, specializing in, well, these exact things, and also from the experiences of what our SOC has seen in our customers as well.
Great. Just interrupt there a little bit. We've had a comment from Andrew McCallum. He says the MSFT Ninja series of training, e.g. Defender, MIP Sentinel, is worth checking out. Also keeping an eye on Rod Trent, MSFT, and Matt Sozman is a very smart guy for security.
Yeah, absolutely. The Ninja series are excellent when it comes to learning Custo and, you know, going from the ground up. They have one for Sentinel, Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Office 365. All of the security capabilities are collected into these Ninja courses. You actually get a quite cute little certificate of completion once you've completed any one of these.
Excellent, thank you. Just thought I'd raise that as well.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew, for the comment.
So as I said, advanced hunting really helps us when we're performing incident responses. Not to shed too much detail on how those engagements usually look, but we tend to onboard our customer into some sort of EDR solution, whether it's Defender for Endpoint, Carbon Black. Those are the biggest ones we're using at the moment. Not that we're, you know, trying to sell Defender for Endpoint in any way, shape, or form, but we see the capabilities and we really believe in the solution as well. And as I've shown you, it really helps you get more versatile when it comes to threat prevention and reacting to threats in your environment. Because the built-in ones, yeah, of course, they're doing their part. They're really good at catching Mimikatz or catching Bazaar Loader or whatever. But when the threat actors get creative, you need to use the custom queries to actually maximize your value of your investment. So another thing I wanted to show you guys, and I just stumbled on this recently because I got fed up with one of the major issues as I see it when it comes to Azure Active Directory security. As you can see here, I got one alert stating that elevating access to Azure subscriptions. And this actually is an indicator from Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps that we have had a global admin elevating their permissions into Azure subscriptions. If we can look at Azure Active Directory for just 1 second. Let me zoom in a little bit. This is the setting that I'm talking about that we're trying to monitor. Azure Active Directory properties, access management for Azure resources. What we've seen in a lot of engagements is that global admins have provided that, okay, this particular global admin should be able to govern access to any and all resources in any and all Azure subscriptions in our environment. When this is toggled to yes, in essence, it means that this particular global admin account can be used to, well, compromise your entire Azure environment. Suffice to say that we recommend that this is only used for break glass scenarios. But the thing is with this particular setting is that it does not show up in the audit logs of Azure Active Directory. It only shows up in the directory events logs in Azure Monitor. But we can actually use Defender for Cloud Apps to monitor this kind of behavior. So if I need to zoom in here as well. We've left the Defender portal and now we're in Defender for Cloud Apps instead. And as you can see, we have 2 open alerts stating that my global admin, shame on me, elevated my access to Azure subscriptions in my environment. And if we're looking into how this is created, we have all of these built-in policies from Microsoft. None of them actually cover this area. So let's see if we can find my policy here. Let's see. Modify, new. A lot of preview stuff. November 15. I thought I created mine. Elevating access to Azure subscriptions. This activity type called Elevate Access from Microsoft Authorization. As I said, it's present in the Azure Monitor directory events log, but it won't show up in any of the security capabilities natively. So we actually need to tell Defender for Cloud Apps to react to these kinds of events. So this isn't actually advanced hunting. This is just a tool tip from my point of view. If you're using Defender for Cloud Apps, which again is an E5 feature, please set up one of these policies to make sure that you're surveying and monitoring all these kinds of events, because you don't want a rogue global admin account adding themselves into the user access administrator role into all of your Azure subscriptions, right? So if we're creating an alert for any of these, we can then, as you saw here, we get an alert in the Microsoft 365 Defender portal as well. And we get all of these, alert description forwarded from Defender for Cloud Apps, incident severity, what user was performing this action, IP addresses, all the kinds of things you need to react to this kind of alert. This is also one of the default settings that I wouldn't say I hate, but I generally dislike with Azure Active Directory not being secure by default.
So Victor, you mentioned E5. Is there any of this that's actually available to E3 subscribers?
Sadly, no. The advanced hunting capabilities are available in the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint or the P2 licenses of any of the Defender products. So you need to be at that level. you don't necessarily need to have an E5 license altogether. You only need a Defender for Endpoint P2, a Defender for Office 365 P2 in order to light the functions up. But other than that, they're not available for the E3 segment. Sad to say.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
So, yeah, that's pretty much what I had to show you guys. Any questions, feedback? I know I've been rambling on, and I tend to get into the real tech savvy stuff when it comes to these sorts of things. Pretty much me assuming that everyone knows as much about KQL as I do.
So Victor,
It's an area. Yeah, go on. Sorry, Anne.
Victor, I'm interested. Going back to what you were showing earlier about those IP addresses, are they just like publicly available, and who are they? Who publishes them?
So when it comes to the Fiodo tracker list, this is publicly available at this URL right here.
Mm-hmm.
So if you navigate to this URL in your browser, you'll see the exact same list that I'm showing you on the screen right here.
And that's a pretty good resource, is it? That's kept up to date regularly and stuff.
Yeah, you can see its last updated was, well, today at 12:20 UTC.
Okay, cool.
So there are a lot of these resources floating around the Twitterverse when it comes to Yara rules, Sigma rules, these kinds of lists of bad IP addresses. We got a second one here when it comes to SHA-256 hashes of a Bazaar loader.
Does Microsoft publish any of this from there? Because I mean, obviously they're collecting quite a lot of data. Do they publish information as well?
Not in that sense, not that I know of. They do, of course, adjust their security capabilities to take these kinds of IP addresses or whatever it is into account when it comes to their security solutions. But I generally feel that the community is quicker than any supplier of services to actually update on these events.
Right. Okay.
The same kind of thinking goes for all the, well, as we call it, the exploit Wednesdays. The Wednesday after patch Tuesday.
Patch Tuesday.
Basically. Yeah. Because what we're seeing is that from an exploit being publicly known until you get deployments or successful POCs of that vulnerability, the time frame is at about 48 hours.
Right, sure.
So when it comes to cybersecurity, we're quite busy trying to adhere to all these new threats popping up all the time.
Yeah, it seems to me that it's good that there's a dynamic community here that publishes or updates all the relevant scripts like you showed. That's so someone doing your work for you. It's a bit like you're looking for a PowerShell script, you go for searching it, but it's actually in the tool set here, so it's good.
Yeah, exactly. You can of course find the Custo queries at GitHub or whatever your favorite repo repo supplier is, but using the community function really adds something extra to advanced hunting in this sense, because as you said, you just need to look at the query, customize it to fit your needs, and run it.
So what would you say are the kind of what's really up to date in terms of the types of maybe not queries, but issues out there that people are having to troubleshoot on platforms? Is there a common theme at the moment?
Well, the biggest culprit is still ransomware when it comes to what we're dealing with on a daily basis. We're still seeing a lot of Exchange servers which are not patched for the proxy logon or the proxy shell vulnerabilities, which have been known since, I think it was like May or something like that, at least for the proxy logon vulnerability. So there's some draft when it comes to patching environments, but otherwise we're dealing with loads of misconfigured environments, the quick and dirty kind of setup. You're using the administrator account to run services or whatever. So I think we need to, as I just spent like 30 odd minutes on talking about real cool tech savvy stuff when it comes to detecting new threats. But for many of my customers, I tell them, we need to dial back on the cool new shiny features and look at our basic security hygiene, both for Active Directory, your SQL servers, your Azure Active Directory, your Azure subscriptions, all those kinds of basic security hygiene stuff.
And in most situations, do you always find stuff that needs resolving on that basis?
Yeah. I haven't had a single security review or security assessment the past couple of years where I haven't found, well, I'm getting a loss for words here. The most common suspects,
Sure.
if you will.
Yeah, thought
there's always this, we added our domain users into domain admins, or well, that's a bad example, but we've actually seen that one in one engagement. We had domain admins were actually 200% of domain users. So they added domain users and domain computers into the domain admin role or domain admin group in the environment. So it's a big no-no, but it was the smoothest running environment I've ever seen because everything just worked.
Yeah. Sorry, Dan, you had a question, didn't you?
And I'm afraid I've been so busy trying to grab links for the chat and making sure that everyone's informed. I've now forgotten what I was going to say.
That's fine.
Well, we've had a couple of thanks and well saids in chat as well for Victor. So yeah, it's been a really good talk. I think a lot of us have learned a lot on this. It's certainly an area that I know very little about personally. So it's
well,
definitely
it's
highlighting some stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of an acquired taste at the moment when it comes to using Custo in this sense. But the links you've posted, Dan, are really good to getting started with Custo, and just play around with it. You can't actually destroy anything. Just this is the equivalent of running the get commandlets in PowerShell, right? So you're just collecting data.
Yeah, just reading. So
yeah,
it's
exactly.
read-only state. So yeah, that's really good.
So I just got one more. So in terms of the query language, Victor, is it only Gusto that can be used, or can use other query languages? Shows my ignorance on this, but
well, when it comes to these kind of advanced hunting, you're only using Custo.
Okay.
You can draw a reference from, as I've shown you, URLs on the internet, stuff like that. But you can't really execute a PowerShell script using Custo at the moment. So,
okay,
yeah.
Great. Thanks very much indeed.
That kind of, well, I mean, if you're using Sentinel, you could perform those activities, but that involves, logic apps firing off when you get a hit, stuff like that.
Right. Okay. Right. I don't think there's any other questions in the chat. Are there, Dan, that you can see?
No, nothing's
No.
nothing's been presented so far.
No.
So just a couple of things really. Like, thank you very, very much to Victor. Really good session.
Yeah.
And the links will be added to the description of the video on YouTube at the end, once that's live for replay. And just to let you know that our next session will be in line with Patch Tuesday, which is the 14th of December.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
I'm sure
I'll have a busy 15th then.
Yeah. And I'm sure we may come wearing Christmas hats or something like that next time.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely a Christmas themed next session. So yeah, and Dean will have returned for them. He's just been on customer jaunts this evening, so that's why he's not here. So
Yeah.
thank you very much all, and yeah, we'll see you next time.
Thanks all.